Yeah, good morning everyone. In the last class, we have discussed about is open loop transmit diversity with more antennas, that is 2 cross 2 SFBC and 4 cross 2 stacked STBC and 4 cross 2 in LTE. And today we are going to do revision of the first module. So that is the key enablers for LTE features. So here some are the key requirements of the LTE design. So here in that the first one is the flexible spectrum usage. So here the frequency band and the amount of spectrum owned by the different mobile operators around the world vary significantly. So here since the many LTE deployments are likely to be reframed spectrum, that is the currently used for 3G or 2G services, here the amount of spectrum that could be made available for the LTE will also depend on how aggressively the individual operators wish to migrate to the LTE. So here in the LTE design, the operators can deploy LTE in frequency ranges from 900 megahertz, 1800 megahertz, 700 megahertz, and 2.6 gigahertz bands. So here the LTE supports a variety of channel bandwidths. It is 1.4, 3, 5, 10, and 15, and 20 megahertz. So it is also mandated that end user devices are able to operate at all the channel bandwidths lower than their maximum capability. For example, a 10 megahertz mobile device with will support all bandwidths up to 10 megahertz. Here the smaller, that is 1.4 megahertz and 5 megahertz channels are optimized for the GSM and the CDMA reframing to support deployments where the operators are unable to free the larger amounts of spectrum. Here the LTE also supports both the frequency division multiplexing, that is FDDD, and the TDD, that is time division multiplexing, to accommodate the paired as well as unpaired spectrum allocations. So in the LTE, both the FDD and TDD is going to support both FDD and TDD to accommodate the paired as well as unpaired spectrum allocations. And the second one is the coexistence and the interworking with 3G systems as well as non-3G GP systems. So here the given the large base of existing mobile subscribers, it is a critical requirement that the LTE networks interwork seamlessly with the existing 2G and the 3G systems. Here the most existing cellular operators are likely to face the LTE over a period of time, with initial deployments being made in areas of high demand such as urban cores. So here the service continuity and the mobility and roaming between the LTE and existing 2G or 3G systems are critical to obtain a seamless user experience. And the next one we are having is reducing the cost per megabyte. So here there is an growing gap between the wireless data consumption and revenue. Here to bridge this gap, it is essential that the substational reductions being achieved in the total network cost to deliver the data to the end users. So here the 3GPP recognizes this issue and has made the reducing the cost per megabyte of the data a key design criteria for LTE. Here the number of design criteria are tied directly to the cost effectively. So that are going to include the high capacity or a high spectral efficiency air interface. So their ability to deploy in existing spectrum and reuse cells sites and the transmission equipment, and support for the lower cost Ethernet based backhaul networks. Next we are having the key enablers for the LTE features. So here the LTE stands for the long-term evolution, and it was started as a project in the 2004 by the telecommunication body known as the 3GPP, that is the third generation partnership project. So here the LTE evolved from an earlier 3GPP system known as the Universal Mobile Telecommunication System, that is UMTS, which is turned evolved from the global system for mobile communication, that is GSM. Here a rapid increase of the mobile data usage and the emergency of a few applications such as MMOG, that is the multimedia online gaming, and mobile TV, Web 2.0. The streaming contents have motivated the third generation partnership project to work on the long term evolution on the way towards the fourth generation mobile. So here the main goal of the LTE is to provide the high data rate and the low latency and the packet optimized radio access technology supporting the flexible bandwidth deployments. At the same time, its network architecture has been designed with the goal to support the packet switch traffic with the seamless mobility and the great quality of service. So this is the very important topic. So this is the key enabling technologies and features of LTE. So here we are designing the LTE, which is going to incorporate the several important radio and core network technologies. One among them is the OFDM. So here the OFDM is a technique of transferring a large amount of digital data over a radio wave. So here a large radio signal is split into several sub-radio signals through which the data is transferred simultaneously at different frequencies to the receiver. So here the data is transmitted parallel across various carriers, with the overall YFDMA signal being split into a number of parallel substreams. So here why the OFDMA technique is used in for LTE. So here these are the following advantages. Following advantages of OFDMA led to its selection for the LTE. So here we are having 9 advantages. What is the first one is elegant solution to multipath interference. So here the OFDMA is a multi-carrier modulation technique where a high bit rate data stream is divided into several parallel low bit rate streams. Here the each bit stream is modulated to separate the carriers. That is the splitting the data streams, increase the symbol duration of each stream such that the multipath delay is only a fraction of the symbol duration. So here it reduces the computational complexity. So here the OFDMA can be easily implemented using FFT as the computational requirements grow with data rate or bandwidth. So here the computational complexity of OFDMA can be shown as capital O. Next, next we are having the reduced computational complexity. So here the OFDMA can be easily implemented using the fast Fourier transforms, that is FFT or FFT. So here the reduced complexity is particularly attractive in the downlink as it simplifies receiver processing and thus reduces the mobile device cost and the power consumption. And the third one is we are having the graceful degradation of performance under excess delay. So here the performance of the OFDMA system degrades gracefully as the delay spread exceeds the value designed for. Here the exploitation of frequency diversity, that is the OFDMA facilitates the coding and interleaving across the subcarriers in the frequency domain. So this provides the robustness against burst errors caused by portions of the transmitted spectrum under the undergoing fades. So here the channel bandwidth can be changed in OFDM without impacting the hardware design of the base station and the mobile station. So here the channel bandwidth can be changed in the OFDM without impacting the hardware design of the either base station or mobile station. Next we are having the enables the efficient multi-access scheme. So here the OFDMA can be used as the multi-access scheme by partitioning different subcarriers among the multiple users. So here the scheme is referred to as the OFDMA and exploited in LTE. So here the OFDMA offers the ability to provide fine granularity in the channel allocation, which can be exploited to achieve significant capacity improvements, particularly in slow time varying channels. And next one we are having is the robust against narrowband interference. So here the YFDM is relatively robust against narrowband interference, since such interference affects only a fraction of the subcarriers. And the next one we are having is suitable for coherent demodulation. So it is easy to do pilot based channel estimation in the OFDMA systems. And the next one is we are having facilities the use of facilitates the use of MIMO. Here the YFDMA converts a frequency selective broadband channel into a several narrowband flat fading channels. Hence the MIMO can be implemented. So it refers to a collection of signal processing techniques that uses multiple antennas at both the transmitter and receiver to improve the system performance. So thus increasing the system capacity. So here the ability to effectively use MIMO techniques to improve the system capacity gives the OFDMA a significant advantage over other techniques. So this is one of the key reason for its choice. So here MIMO and OFDMA have already been combined effectively in the Wi-Fi and the WiMAX systems. And the last one we are having the efficient support of broadcast services. So here by synchronizing the base station, it is possible to operate an OFDM network as a single frequency network. So this allows the broadcast signals from different cells to combine over the air to enhance the received power and thus the providing high data rate broadcast transmission for a given transmit power. So thus increasing the efficiency of the broadcast services. And next we have SCFD and SCFDMA. So here in the SCFDMA to keep the cost down and battery life up. So here the LTE incorporated a power efficient transmission scheme for the uplink. So in the SCFDMA to keep the cost down and the battery life up. So here the LTE is going to incorporated a power efficient transmission schemes for the uplink. So here the single carrier frequency domain equalization, that is SCFDE, is conceptually similar to the OFDM, but instead of transmitting the inverse fast Fourier transform, that is IFFT, here the actual data symbols are sent as a sequence of QAM symbols with a cyclic prefix added. So here the IFFT is added at the end of the receiver. So here the SCFD retains all the advantages of OFDM, such as the multipath resistance and low complexity, while having a low peak to average ratio of 4 to 5 dB. So here the uplink of the LTE implements a multi-user version of SCFDE, so called as SCFDMA, which allows the multiple users to use a part of the frequency spectrum. So here the SCFDMA closely resembles the OFDMA and can in fact be thought of as to DFT pre-coded OFDMA. So here the SCFDMA also preserves the PAR properties of SCFDE but increases the complexity of the transmitter and the receiver. Next we are having the multi-antenna techniques. So here the LTE standard provides extensive support for implementing the advanced multiple antenna solutions to improve link robustness, system capacity and spectral efficiency. So here depending on the deployment scenario, one or more of the techniques can be used. So here the multi-antenna techniques supported in the LTE systems are include. First one is the transmit diversity, beamforming, spatial multiplexing and multiple user MIMO. So first one we're having that is transmit diversity. So here this technique combats multipath fading. So this technique is to avoid the multipath fading in the wireless channel. So the idea here is to send copies of the same signal coded differently over the multiple transmit antennas. So here the LTE transmit diversity is based on the space frequency block coding complemented with frequency shift time diversity. So this transmit diversity is used for the downlink channels. So in the downlink channels only we are using this transmit diversity, and the transmit diversity increases the system capacity and the cell range. So it is going to increase the transmit diversity is going to increase the system capacity and the range of the cell. And next we are having beamforming. So here the multiple antennas can be used in the same direction such that it focuses the transmitted beam in the direction of the receiver and away from interference, thereby increasing the signal to the interference ratio. And this increases the coverage range, capacity and reliability, and the battery life also it increases. So your beamforming can be used in providing angular information for user tracking. So the LTE supports the beamforming in the downlink. So next we are having spatial multiplexing. So here in the spatial multiplexing, The independent streams can be transmitted in parallel over the multiple antennas and are separated at the receiver using the multiple receiver chains through the signal processing. So spatial multiplexing provides the data rate and capacity gains proportional to the antennas used. So it works well under SNR and light load conditions, and hence it has an effect on peak rates. So next we have a multi-user MIMO. So in the multi-user MIMO, due to the complexity and cost, spatial multiplexing is not used in the uplink. So here the multi-user MIMO allows the multiple users in the uplink, each with a single antenna, to transmit using the same frequency and the time resource. So signals from the different multi-user MIMOs are separated at the base station receiver using the accurate channel state information of each user obtained through the uplink references, signals that are orthogonal between the users. So next we are having IP based flat network architecture. This is a very important topic. Definitely this question will come for external exam in the external exam. So here what is IP? Here IP is a set of requirements for addressing and routing data on the internet. So here IP can be used with several transport protocols that includes TCP and UDP, that is transmission control protocol, and user datagram protocol. So here IP is a protocol or a set of rules for routing and addressing packets of data so that they can travel across the networks and arrive at the correct destination. So here beside the air interference, the other radial aspect of LTE is the flat radio and core network architecture. So here flat here implies fewer nodes and a less hierarchical structure for the network. So the lower cost and lower latency requirements drew the design toward a flat architecture, since fewer nodes obviously implies a lower infrastructure cost. So here figure shows the IP based flat network architecture. So here the fewer nodes reduces interoperability, provides better optimization of radio interfaces, merging some control panel protocols and short session startup time. Here the key aspects of LTE flat network architecture is that all services including voice and supported on the IP packet network using the IP protocols. So here the LTE has a single evolved packet switch core over which all the services are supported, providing a huge operational and infrastructure savings. So here 3GPP release 6 architecture, which is conceptually very similar to its predecessors. So it has 4 network elements. The data path. First one is the base station or node B. Radio controller, radio network controller, that is RNC, and serving the GPRS service node, that is SGSN, and the last one is the gateway GPRS service node. So here release 7 introduced a direct tunnel option from the RNC to the GGSN. So the release 7 introduced the direct tunnel option from the RNC to the GGSN, which eliminated the SGSN for the data path. So here the LTE on the other hand will have only 2 network elements in the data path. It is the enhanced node B or eNode B. Enhanced node B or eNode B and a system architecture evolution gateway, that is SAEGW. So unlike the previous cellular system, here the LTE merges the base station and the radio network controller functionality into a single unit. Here the controller path includes a functional entity called the mobility management entity, that is the MME, which provides the this is the MME which provides the control panel functions related to the subcarrier mobility and the session management. So here the MME and SE gateway could be collocated in a single entity called the access gateway, that is the AGW. So here the key aspect of the LTE architecture is that the all services including voice are supported on the IP packet network using the IP protocols. So here unlike the previous systems which had a separate circuit switched subnetwork for supporting voice with their own mobile switching centers, that is MSC, and the transport networks. So here the LTE envisions only a single evolved packet switch core. So here the EPC over all the services are supported, which could provide the huge operational and infrastructure cost savings. So it should be noted that however that although LTE has been designed for IP services with a flat architecture due to backwards compatibility, reasons certain legacy and non-IP aspects of the 3GPP architecture, such as the GPRS, tunneling protocol, and PDCP, that is Packet Data Convergence Protocol, still exists within the LTE network architecture. So this is about the IP-based flat architecture. Next, we are having LTE network architecture or evolved packet core architecture. This is also very important. The view of examination. So here the core network design supported by LTE is called as evolved packet core. Here it is designed to provide high capability, high capacity, and reduced latency. Flat architecture that dramatically reduces the cost and support advanced real-time and media-rich services with enhanced quality of services, quality of experience. So it provides, so it supports radio access networks such as LTE. So here the EPC includes the functions such as access control, packet routing and transfer, mobility management, security, radio resource management, and network management. So here the EPC includes four new elements. That is the network serving gateway, that is SGW, packet data network gateway, that is PGW, mobility management entity, that is MME, and the policy and charging rules function, that is PCRF. Yeah, the serving gateway which terminates the interface towards the 3GPP radio access network. So packet data network gateway which controls the IP data serving data services, does routing and allocates IP addresses and enforces policy and provides the access for the non-3GPP access networks. So third one, mobility management entity, which supports the user equipment, context and identity, as well as authenticates and authorizes users. So and the policy and charging rule functions, which manages the QoS aspects. So this figure shows the end-to-end architecture, including how the EPC support LTE as well as the current and legacy radio access networks. So here the brief description of the each element, each four new elements is provided. So the first one is the serving gateway, SGW, serving gateway. So the SGW acts as a demarcation point between the RAN and core network and manages user plane mobility. So it terminates the interface towards 3GPP radio access network, and it acts as a separator between the RAN and core network and manages user plane mobility. So it serves as a mobility anchor terminates when the terminals move across areas served by different E node B elements of a trun. So here the SGW does downlink packet buffering and initiation of network triggered service request procedures. So here the SGW other functions include lawful interception, packet routing and forwarding, transport level packet marking in the uplink, and the downlink accounting support for per user and inter-operator charging. And the second element is Packet Data Network Gateway, that is PGW. So here it acts as a termination point of the EPC towards other packet data networks such as internet, private IP network, or the IMS network providing end user services. So it is also provides functions such as IP address allocation, policy enforcement, packet filtering, and the charging support. So the policy enforcement includes operator defined rules for resource allocation to control the data rate and QoS and usage. So here the packet filtering functions include the deep packet inspection for application detection. Next, your third element is mobility management entity. So here it performs the signaling and control functions to manage the user terminal to access to the network connections, assignment of network resources and mobility management functions such as idle mode location tracking, paging, roaming and handovers. So here the MME controls all control panel functions related to the subcarrier and session management. So it also provides security functions such as providing temporary identities for user terminals, interacting with home subscriber service for authentication and negotiation of ciphering and integrity protection algorithm. So it is also responsible for selecting the appropriate serving and PDN gateways, selecting the legacy gateways for handovers. So here the MME manages thousands of eNode elements. So here it should be noted that the MME manages thousands of eNode B elements, which is one of the key difference from 2G or 3G platforms using the RNC and SGSN platforms. And the last element you are having is the policy and charging rules functions. That is PCRF. So here the PCRF is a Here the PCRF is a concatenation of policy design function, decision function, that is PDF, and the charging rules function CRF. Here the PCRF interfaces with the PDN gateway and supports the service data flow detection, policy enforcement and flow based charging. So here the PCRF was actually defined in release 7 of 3GPP ahead of LTE. So although not much deployed with pre-LTE systems, it is a mandatory for LTE. So here the release 8 further enhanced PCRF functionality to include the support for non-3GPP access, for example Wi-Fi and fixed line accesses to the network. So this is about the LTE network architecture.